Hi guys, so today's video is going to be a non-spoiler book review for Sorcery of Thorns by Maragaret Rogerson. This is a standalone fantasy story that follows our main character named Elizabeth. Elizabeth has always wanted to be something called a warden, who are these sort of soldier guard-like people who protect these magical books called grimoires. Currently, Elizabeth works in the library where these magical books are. These books sometimes have the ability to become these monsters called malefics. It's part of why we have these wardens that protect them, and also the wardens that protect people from them in the event that something bad transpires that causes these malefics to come out. At one point, tragedy strikes and a malefic is set free, and Elizabeth is the one who everybody claims is responsible. She now has to be basically put on trial by the sorcerers. Her whole life she has believed that sorcerers are evil. There are a lot of laws that restrict sorcerers from using certain spells like necromancy, or for using certain spells that are going to negatively harm people, take advantage of people, and try to basically create these books and these monsters. So she's always thought they were evil, and now she's thinking it must have been a sorcerer that was responsible, and I'm just being put right in their hands and they're gonna kill me as soon as I get there. That is the main setup for the story. You only have one point of view in this. You just follow Elizabeth, and it's not third person omniscient, so you're not going to get a little bit of everything throughout the book. You just are with Elizabeth, so you get to know her pretty well. The other characters you get to know through her. This does mean that their backstories or their behavior, sometimes Elizabeth doesn't know why they're acting the way they're acting, and you kind of uncover that as the story goes on. The same can be said for the villain. So in this particular story, there's pretty high stakes for sure, and I always appreciate when there's high stakes. I think that definitely makes it more of a page turner, makes you feel like you have a reason to root for the main characters more. But the villains' reasons for doing what they were doing, they're not just I'm evil for the sake of being evil necessarily, even though their plan kind of comes across that way initially. When you sort of understand why they're doing what they're doing, you get it, but you don't get in their head, so I wouldn't say that you sympathize with them necessarily. You just kind of can understand a little bit why they think it's the right thing to do. There are some elements of the story that I think are extremely unique. I think the whole way that Maragaret Rogerson does the magical library is really fun. It's kind of cute and quirky. One of the books, for example, likes to spit ink at the library and silly things like that. One of them sings opera. It's really, it's so fairy tale-like and kind of bizarre and whimsical, and I really loved that. There are other elements of the story, though, that are tropes, I would say, and tropes are not inherently bad. It's just a matter of whether you like tropes, certain tropes, or not. But I wouldn't say that this story is unique in every way. The formula, the setup, the relationships, a lot of them are pretty straightforward. I don't think I read this book and thought, wow, what complex characters and what complex, interesting relationships. I don't know that I came away from this book with that thought, but I don't think that's what that book was trying to do. There are definitely some themes that I really liked that it presents, but I don't think it was trying to be groundbreaking when it comes to the characters themselves and getting super deep into the characters and their arcs, things like that. I think it was a really fun, well-paced standalone that has a unique premise, a unique setup, but also feels somewhat familiar. One thing that I think could potentially be a negative for some people, but it's just a matter of how you take it, is our main character is a little bit naive. She was very sheltered growing up. She was an orphan. She grew up in the magical library, so she really doesn't have a lot of exposure to the outside world. She doesn't have a lot of exposure to sorcery. She doesn't have a lot of exposure to other people. And so sometimes she's a little bit naive. And when you're reading the story, it's third person. So you can kind of see what's up. You're like, hey, this is obviously what's going to happen. Maybe don't do that. But she's very trusting and I would say pretty optimistic. So she sometimes will try to do something she thinks, oh, I have to do this. This is the right thing to do. And I'm sure it'll work out. for the best. And then she goes to do it and you're like, that's not going to work out at all. And then it doesn't work out. And she's like, how could this happen? And you're like, well, you know, because of everything else that's been going down, that's how people are. That's kind of sort of a bit of a situation that pops up a decent amount of times, but it's not that she's dumb. I think that she is just very sheltered, and that is a part of her character. It would have been really out of character if she just had these amazing gut instincts and knew exactly who not to trust and who she should trust. That just wouldn't have worked for her character. She had to take chances. She tried to have certain people help her, and she tried to make allies out of certain people, and sometimes it worked, sometimes it didn't work. But always she tried to do what she felt was the right thing to do. I think that that's a really fun character. That's a character you can get behind, somebody who's not super morally gray, which I think is a great kind of character, but that's not her character. I wouldn't say she's morally gray. She's naive, she's innocent, but she always wants to do the right thing. A theme then for this book, and one that I really enjoyed personally, was the concept of what is good, what is right, and what is evil or what is wrong. And Elizabeth, that is definitely a part of the story, a part of her character arc and her character growth. And it's something that fits really well with the fact that she's so sheltered throughout the story initially, and then as you go on, she's kind of being exposed to more things, and her worldview is changing. And I think this is a very, very good theme to have in a young adult book, because a lot of times when you're a younger person, when you're older too, but I remember I thought of the world a certain way when I was younger, and then as I got older and you meet new people and you hear other people's experiences, you gain empathy and you maybe see that things aren't so cut and dry, things aren't as clear maybe as you thought before, and there's a lot of blurred lines. And I think Elizabeth, it's not a coming of age story, it's just her kind of coming into her own viewpoints of the world. Something that I rarely talk about when I do book reviews would be representation. And the reason that I rarely talk about it is because I often feel like I don't fit into the particular things that are underrepresented. And so it's not really my place to be like, guess what? This was a perfect example of what it's like, because I don't know what it's like. I do want to talk about it though with this book, because I thought that Margaret Rogerson did a really fantastic job of writing a character who is a character first. They are a person first, they have a personality, they have a backstory, they have certain struggles, so they are their own human being. They just happen to be bi. That's it. It's not like, guess what, guys? This person's bi. Guess what? Did you know they're bi? They're bisexual, guys. Wow. It wasn't just that's all they are. It wasn't a token character. It wasn't Margaret Rogerson being like, aren't I amazing for writing someone bi? It didn't feel like that to me at all. It was just, she just wrote a person. She wrote a person, and they happened to be bi, and I really appreciated that, because I wish that's how it was in real life, you know, more often, that people would let me clarify, because it's starting to sound like I'm like, can bi people act like real people? That's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying I wish more often when somebody happens to mention having a sexual orientation that isn't the norm, that isn't straight, or if somebody happens to be some form of minority in whatever place they are living in, I wish more often that people would recognize that they're people first, and they're not just whatever the thing is that makes them a minority in some way. And I really appreciated that that's how Margaret Rogerson approached this character, at least I'm guessing how she approached them. It's how it came across to me. And I felt like it was worth mentioning because I thought she did a good job. I do want to touch on a couple of other things. One, the dialogue. So I've mentioned already that our main character, Elizabeth, she's a little naive. She doesn't always know what's up. And because of it, sometimes she has very grand, wonderful thoughts that get turned into words, and they're a tad cheesy sometimes. So somebody will ask her, what are you doing here? Why do you want to do this? And she's like, I need to find the truth. I need to. And you're just like, calm down. Nobody talks like that. But she does, because she's super innocent and naive, and she's always like, I have to do what's right. You should do what's right too, you know. It's the right thing to do. So that's how she is. So it fit her personality. However, surface level, if you just take certain lines out of the book, can definitely see where you'd be like, some of this dialogue's a little over the top. And it's just because when it's coming out of her mouth, it is a little over the top, because she's a little over the top. She's a little much. She's very I have to do the right thing. So that's, I thought, fitting for her character. Not everybody talks like that. But I do feel like it's something to point out because if you're reading it and you get to those parts, you might kind of want to roll your eyes a little, like, okay, I guess you're the hero here. But I personally thought it fit her character perfectly. Anyway, that is it for my review of Sorcery of Thorns. If you've read it, let me know your thoughts. If you want to talk spoilers, just write spoilers and then a bunch of enter so that way nobody is spoiled who hasn't read it. And if you happen to be one of the people who hasn't read it, let me know if it sounds like something you'd want to pick up. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you guys later. Bye.